The scorching African sun beats down mercilessly on a landscape that would be completely alien to modern eyes. 7 million years ago, the continent stretches endlessly in shades of amber and rust, punctuated by isolated patches of dense woodland that seem to shimmer like mirages in the oppressive heat. This is a world where survival isn't just difficult, it's a daily miracle that defies all odds. In the canopy of an ancient fig tree, a small figure clings desperately to a branch as thick as a human torso. Her name is lost to time, but her story will echo through millions of years of evolution. She is one of our earliest ancestors, a creature caught between two worlds, neither fully ape nor human, but something extraordinary in between. Her dark eyes scan the horizon with an intelligence that sets her apart from every other creature in this primordial landscape. The sound that makes her freeze isn't the familiar rustling of leaves or the distant call of birds. It's something far more terrifying, the low, rumbling growl of a saber-toothed cat prowling through the undergrowth below. Her heart pounds against her ribs as she realizes that her usual escape routes through the trees have been cut off by a recent storm that brought down several massive branches. She's trapped, and the predator knows it. But this moment of terror represents something profound in the story of human evolution. 7 million years ago, our ancestors faced challenges that would have destroyed any other lineage. The climate was shifting dramatically, transforming lush forests into patchy woodlands and expanding savannas. Food sources were becoming scarce, predators were evolving to become more efficient killers, and competition for resources was reaching a breaking point that would determine which species would survive and which would vanish forever. The female in the tree possesses something that will change the course of life on Earth, a brain that's slightly larger than her contemporaries, hands that can grip with unprecedented precision, and most importantly, an ability to think several steps ahead. As the saber-toothed cat circles the base of her tree, she doesn't just panic, she calculates. Her eyes dart between the predator below, the storm-damaged canopy around her, and a cluster of rocks near the base of an adjacent tree. What happens next defies everything we thought we knew about early human behavior. Instead of waiting for the predator to lose interest or attempting a dangerous leap to another tree, she begins systematically breaking off dried branches and hurling them at specific spots on the ground. But these aren't random throws born of desperation. They're calculated strikes designed to create noise and confusion in a pattern that will drive the saber-toothed cat toward the rocky outcropping where her keen eyes have spotted something the predator hasn't noticed. The strategy works with stunning precision. The confused cat, startled by the barrage of branches, moves exactly where she intended, directly toward a concealed pit trap created by recent erosion and hidden by fallen vegetation. The sound of the predator's distressed roars as it becomes trapped echoes across the savannah, but our ancestor doesn't celebrate. She's already moving, using the distraction to navigate through the damaged canopy, with an agility that speaks to millions of years of arboreal adaptation. This single moment encapsulates the incredible intelligence that was emerging in our early ancestors. But it's just one thread in a tapestry of survival that stretched across an entire continent. 7 million years ago, Africa was experiencing one of the most dramatic environmental transformations in Earth's history. The Sahara Desert as we know it didn't exist. Instead, vast grasslands stretched from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean, broken by ribbons of rivers that supported an explosion of life unlike anything the modern world has ever seen. Along the banks of these ancient waterways, massive herds of elephant-like creatures called gomphotheres moved in migrations that could be heard from miles away. Their trumpeting calls mixed with the roars of giant lions, twice the size of their modern descendants, creating a symphony of survival that played out every day across the prehistoric landscape. But perhaps the most remarkable inhabitants of this lost world were the early human ancestors who had begun to develop behaviors that would set them on the path to eventual dominance. In a small band traveling along the edge of what would one day become the Great Rift Valley, a young male discovers something that will revolutionize his group's survival strategy. As he searches for edible roots in the rocky soil, his fingers close around a piece of volcanic glass that has been naturally shaped by geological forces into something resembling a primitive blade. The moment he lifts it from the earth, he understands its potential with a clarity that seems almost supernatural. The first experimental cuts he makes on a piece of fallen wood reveal the incredible sharpness of this natural tool. But what happens next demonstrates the kind of innovative thinking that would eventually lead to space travel and digital technology. Instead of simply using the glass shard as he found it, he begins deliberately shaping it by striking it against other rocks, creating the world's first intentionally modified tool. The implications of this moment ripple through his entire community. When he returns to the group carrying strips of meat that he was able to cut with unprecedented precision, the others don't just appreciate the food, they begin to understand that the natural world can be modified and improved through intelligent intervention. Within days, multiple members of the group are experimenting with tool creation, each discovery building upon the last in an exponential explosion of innovation. But even as these early humans were developing the technologies that would eventually separate them from every other species on Earth, they were facing existential threats that would have crushed any less adaptable creatures. The climate was becoming increasingly unpredictable, with droughts that could last for years, followed by floods that swept away entire ecosystems. During one particularly devastating dry season, our ancestors faced a challenge that pushed them to the very limits of survival. The watering holes that had sustained their community for generations had dried up completely, leaving only cracked earth and the bleached bones of less fortunate animals. With their children growing weaker by the day and no rain in sight, the group faced a decision that would determine whether their genetic line would continue or join the countless other species that had already vanished from the fossil record. The solution came from an unexpected source, an elderly female whose failing eyesight had made her seem like a burden to the group's survival. But her years of experience had taught her to read subtle signs in the landscape that younger eyes couldn't detect. She had noticed that certain types of vegetation remained green longer than others, even during severe droughts, and she suspected that these plants might be accessing underground water sources. Following her guidance, the group began digging in areas where these drought-resistant plants clustered together. The work was backbreaking, performed with primitive tools under a sun that seemed determined to kill everything beneath it. For days, they excavated deeper and deeper, driven by nothing but faith in the observations of an ancient woman whose wisdom had been accumulated over decades of survival. When they finally struck water at a depth that would have challenged even modern excavation techniques, the moment represented more than just the discovery of a life-saving resource. It demonstrated the incredible value of accumulated knowledge and the willingness to invest enormous effort based on careful observation and logical deduction. These cognitive abilities were becoming the defining characteristics of our species, setting us apart from even our closest relatives in ways that would prove decisive in the struggle for survival. The underground spring they uncovered became the foundation for a semi-permanent settlement that attracted animals from across the region. This convergence of life created opportunities that our ancestors were uniquely positioned to exploit. They developed sophisticated hunting strategies that relied not on brute strength or speed, but on intelligence, cooperation, and an understanding of animal behavior that bordered on the supernatural. One of the most remarkable examples of their evolving intelligence involved their relationship with a pack of early canids, primitive dogs that had begun following human groups in search of food scraps. Rather than driving these potential competitors away, our ancestors recognized an opportunity for mutual benefit. They began deliberately sharing portions of their kills with the most cooperative dogs, gradually developing a partnership that would prove invaluable in the dangerous landscape of prehistoric Africa. The alliance between early humans and proto-dogs created a formidable team that could detect threats and opportunities across vast distances. The dogs' superior senses of hearing and smell combined with human intelligence and tool-making abilities to create a hunting and defense system that gave both species significant advantages over their competitors. This partnership represents one of the earliest examples of the kind of strategic thinking that would eventually enable humans to reshape entire ecosystems. But perhaps the most incredible aspect of life 7 million years ago was the constant presence of dangers that would seem unimaginable to modern minds. Giant crocodiles longer than school buses lurked in rivers that appeared deceptively peaceful. Massive birds of prey with wingspans exceeding 20 feet soared overhead, capable of snatching adult humans as easily as modern hawks take rabbits. Even seemingly harmless encounters could turn deadly in an instant, as when a group of our ancestors stumbled upon a family of chalicotheres, bizarre creatures that looked like a nightmare fusion of horse and gorilla, equipped with claws that could disembowel a human with a single swipe. During one such encounter, a young female named in our imagination as Kessie found herself separated from her group when a sudden thunderstorm scattered the hunting party across several miles of rugged terrain. As lightning illuminated the landscape in stark, terrifying flashes, she realized that she wasn't alone in seeking shelter. The cave she had chosen was already occupied by something far more dangerous than the storm raging outside. The growl that emanated from the depths of the cave was unlike anything in her experience, too deep for a big cat, too resonant for a bear. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, she could make out the outline of something that defied classification. It was a creature that would never be seen by modern humans, a predator so perfectly adapted to its environment that it had dominated the African landscape for millions of years before our ancestors arrived on the scene. What followed was a test of every survival instinct that had been honed over countless generations. Casey couldn't outrun this creature, couldn't overpower it, and couldn't escape from the cave without exposing herself to the deadly lightning strikes that were illuminating the landscape in brilliant stroboscopic flashes. Her only advantage was her ability to think, plan, and adapt faster than any other creature that had ever lived. Using techniques that her group had developed for hunting, she began creating diversions and obstacles using rocks and debris from the cave floor. Every move had to be calculated perfectly. One mistake would mean not just her own death, but the loss of genetic material that had taken millions of years to develop and might never emerge again. The confrontation became a deadly chess match played in near-total darkness, with stakes that couldn't have been higher. The resolution of this life-or-death struggle came through an innovation that would become a hallmark of human survival strategy. Instead of attempting to defeat the predator directly, Cassie used her understanding of fire to create a psychological weapon more powerful than any physical tool. Using techniques her group had learned from observing lightning-struck trees, she managed to create sparks using flint and dry material, gradually building a flame that transformed her from prey into something far more dangerous. The sight of controlled fire wielded by an intelligent creature triggered primordial fears in the predator that had been coded into its DNA over millions of years of evolution. Fire meant destruction, pain, and death on a scale that no individual creature could fight. The predator's retreat from the cave gave Cassie the opportunity she needed to escape, but more importantly, it demonstrated the incredible power that would eventually make humans the dominant species on Earth. This mastery of fire represented more than just a survival tool. It was a technology that would revolutionize every aspect of human existence. With fire, our ancestors could extend their active hours into the night, cook food to make it more nutritious and easier to digest, and create weapons that could bring down creatures many times their size. The psychological impact of fire on other animals also provided protection that allowed human communities to establish permanent settlements in areas that would otherwise have been too dangerous to inhabit. The social implications of fire mastery were equally profound. Gathering around fires in the evening created opportunities for communication, storytelling, and the transmission of knowledge that would accelerate human development at an unprecedented pace. The dancing flames became the focus of the first human communities, where experiences were shared, strategies were developed, and the foundations of culture began to emerge from the raw material of survival necessity. But even with these revolutionary advantages, life 7 million years ago remained a constant struggle against forces that could eliminate entire populations in a matter of days. Volcanic eruptions could bury vast areas under layers of ash, creating toxic wastelands where nothing could survive. Earthquakes could redirect rivers, turning fertile valleys into barren deserts overnight. Perhaps most terrifyingly, changes in climate could trigger cascading ecosystem collapses that would eliminate the plants and animals that human communities depended upon for survival. During one such catastrophic period, a volcanic eruption in what would later become the Ethiopian highlands created an ash cloud that blocked sunlight across thousands of square miles. The resulting environmental catastrophe killed most of the vegetation and drove away the animal herds that human communities had relied upon for generations. Faced with starvation, our ancestors were forced to make decisions that would test the limits of their adaptability and intelligence. The solution they developed involved a combination of technologies and strategies that demonstrated remarkable foresight and planning abilities. They began creating food storage systems using natural caves and artificial structures that could preserve meat and plant materials for extended periods. They developed new hunting techniques specifically designed to target the smaller animals that were more likely to survive environmental catastrophes. Most importantly, they began establishing trade relationships with distant communities, creating support networks that could provide resources during times of crisis. These survival strategies required forms of abstract thinking and long-term planning that had never before existed in the natural world. Our ancestors had to imagine future scenarios, calculate risks and benefits, and coordinate complex activities across multiple communities. The cognitive abilities they were developing would eventually enable them to create art, music, religion, and science, but at this early stage, they were focused entirely on the immediate challenge of staying alive in a world that seemed determined to destroy them. The individuals who survived these prehistoric catastrophes weren't necessarily the strongest or fastest. They were the most intelligent, adaptable, and cooperative. They understood that survival in such a hostile environment required not just individual excellence, but the ability to work together in ways that maximized the strengths of every group member. The elderly provided knowledge and wisdom, adults provided strength and skill, and children represented the future that made all their struggles meaningful. One of the most remarkable examples of this cooperative intelligence involved a community's response to a prolonged drought that had eliminated all surface water sources across their territory. Rather than simply migrating to a new area or waiting for conditions to improve, they developed an engineering solution that would have impressed modern hydrologists. Using nothing but primitive tools and an understanding of geology gained through careful observation, they created an irrigation system that could transport water from underground sources to their settlement. The construction of this water management system required coordinated effort from dozens of individuals working over several months. Every aspect of the project had to be planned in advance, from the initial surveying of water sources to the final distribution of water within their settlement. The mathematical precision required to calculate gradients, flow rates, and structural requirements demonstrated cognitive abilities that were approaching modern human levels of sophistication. But perhaps the most incredible aspect of life 7 million years ago was the rapid pace of evolutionary change that was occurring within human populations. Unlike modern humans, who have remained essentially unchanged for tens of thousands of years, our prehistoric ancestors were experiencing genetic modifications at a rate that would be visible within individual lifetimes. Brain sizes were increasing, hand coordination was improving, and social behaviors were becoming more sophisticated with each passing generation. This accelerated evolution was driven by the intense selective pressures of prehistoric life, where even minor advantages could mean the difference between survival and extinction. Individuals with slightly better problem-solving abilities, improved manual dexterity, or enhanced social skills were more likely to survive long enough to reproduce and pass these traits on to their offspring. Over time, these small improvements accumulated into the dramatic changes that would eventually separate humans from all other species on Earth. The environmental challenges of this prehistoric world also drove innovations that would become fundamental to human civilization. The need to track seasonal changes and predict weather patterns led to the development of the first calendars and astronomical observations. The requirement to communicate complex hunting strategies and tool-making techniques across generations resulted in the emergence of sophisticated language systems that could convey abstract concepts and detailed instructions. These early languages weren't just simple collections of sounds used to identify objects and actions. They were complex communication systems capable of expressing ideas, emotions, and plans that existed only in the minds of their speakers. The ability to share thoughts, experiences, and knowledge through language created a form of collective intelligence that was far more powerful than any individual human brain. This shared knowledge base allowed communities to accumulate wisdom across generations, building upon the discoveries and insights of their ancestors in ways that accelerated human development exponentially. The art and symbolic expression that began to emerge during this period represented another crucial milestone in human evolution. Cave paintings, carved figurines, and decorative objects served purposes that went beyond mere aesthetics. They were systems for storing and transmitting information that couldn't be adequately expressed through language alone. These early art forms documented hunting techniques, tracked seasonal changes, and preserved cultural knowledge that would otherwise have been lost when individual community members died. But even as our ancestors were developing the technologies and social systems that would eventually enable them to dominate the Earth, they remained vulnerable to threats that could eliminate entire populations without warning. Disease outbreaks could spread through communities with devastating speed, killing individuals faster than they could be replaced. Natural disasters could destroy the infrastructure and knowledge base that communities had spent generations building. Most terrifyingly, encounters with other human groups could result in conflicts that combined the intelligence and tool-making abilities of our species with the territorial instincts inherited from our animal ancestors. These intergroup conflicts were unlike anything seen in the modern world. They were total wars fought with stone weapons and fire, where the losing side faced not just defeat, but complete extinction. The survivors of these conflicts weren't necessarily the most aggressive or warlike communities, but those that had developed the most effective combinations of military tactics, defensive technologies, and diplomatic strategies. Success in these prehistoric conflicts required the same kinds of intelligence and planning that would later be applied to creating cities, governments, and global civilizations. As our journey through this incredible lost world draws to a close, we're left with a profound appreciation for the remarkable individuals who survived the impossible challenges of life 7 million years ago. These weren't primitive creatures stumbling through a hostile world. They were intelligent, innovative, and incredibly brave individuals who faced dangers that would challenge even modern humans equipped with advanced technology. Their success in surviving and thriving in such a hostile environment laid the foundation for every achievement in human history, from the first cities of Mesopotamia to the spacecraft that now explore the outer reaches of our solar system. The legacy of their struggles lives on in every human being alive today. The intelligence, adaptability, and cooperative spirit that enabled them to survive against impossible odds are the same qualities that drive modern scientific discoveries, artistic creations, and technological innovations. When we look at the night sky and wonder about our place in the universe, when we create art that expresses the deepest aspects of human experience, or when we work together to solve complex problems that no individual could handle alone, we're drawing upon cognitive and social abilities that were forged in the crucible of prehistoric Africa 7 million years ago. Their story reminds us that survival isn't just about avoiding death. It's about creating meaning, building communities, and passing knowledge and wisdom onto future generations. The individuals who lived through this incredible period of human evolution didn't just survive, they laid the groundwork for everything that makes us uniquely human. Their courage, intelligence, and determination in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges continues to inspire us as we face the uncertainties of our own rapidly changing world.